All right, students, at the end of chapter 2, it talked about another reason that may affect student learning, and that is because they may fall under the special education umbrella. And so we said in the special education umbrella, there are 12 categories, with the 13th being gifted and talented. So we ended up talking about gifted and talented at the end and what some of the issues were for gifted and talented. But then towards the end, it really goes into special education, but not gifted and talented, all of the other of the 12 categories. And so when you take Education 2301, that will be the whole focus. So for right now, you're just kind of getting a brief introduction into special ed. So in 1975, Education for All Handicapped Children Act passed. And so again, when you get into 2301, you'll see the history of special ed and how students were served or actually were not served. And then in the 60s, 70s, we saw the civil rights movement, and part of that also was equal access for education for all, including those students that are handicapped. So in 1975, we said that we would provide free and appropriate education for all students. Then in 1991, the passage of IDEA, which stands for Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, extended coverage from ages 3 to 21, so it wasn't just school age children. And so this is where we start to see the advent of Head Start, and we continue to see the push for Head Start and the fact that we have now EC through 6 certification, and we are seeing more EC through 2 schools. Those of you that will observe in Alvin, you will see those EC through 2 schools. And added was autism and traumatic brain injury, which is listed on the 12 that we went over last class. And then in 2004, IDEA was further revived to birth to 21. So many people don't realize that the school district that you live in, meaning you're paying the taxes to, will provide resources to your family if your child is deemed to fall into one of those categories. And so you contact the school district, even though your child's not in school, you pay taxes to that district in order to find out what services are available to you. IDEA also said we need to train and hire highly qualified providers, and also we need to provide rehab and social work for students. And so if you click on this hyperlink, it brings you to IDEA. So all information you want about IDEA will be listed on this site here. And so what are the principles basically of special education in the K through 12 setting in the U.S.? First is zero reject. We do not deny any child. So that's part of the free and appropriate education. And so there are some students that are in special education rooms that are self-contained, that are on ventilators. We don't deny access to any student in our schools. Next is non-discriminatory education, that we fairly assess to remove tracking and inappropriate classification. So many times that might be due to socioeconomic status or minority status. And so part of special education is to fairly assess and remove those labels that are inaccurate. And next we want to give every student appropriate education. So we want it to be responsive and accurate based on needs. So you will learn that yearly a student will sit in an ARD meeting, and the R part is to review yearly to make sure that we are meeting the needs of the student. We also want them to be in the least restrictive environment, meaning we want to stay away from separate classrooms or what we call self-contained. Our goal in special education is to include students with disabilities in regular education classrooms, and we call this mainstreaming. 5, part of special education is we do provide a procedural due process. So if a student is assessed and we do not feel as though as a school district they meet the criteria, then the parent has every right to appeal that and go for a second opinion. However, if the second opinion does not stand, the parent is out that money. However, if the second opinion overrules the school district, then the school will pay for that second opinion. And then 6, that each student will have an individual education program, or what in education we call IEP. And so this is a document, a legal document that comes out after the annual review where we meet in an ARD, which is admissions review and dismissal, and that individual plan is given to teachers to be upheld for the student. And so again, when we are looking at the special education parameters, we want all students to be in the least restrictive environment, which is the regular education classroom, which has the most amount of students. However, depending on the modifications, the student may be in a regular education classroom with consultation. They may be with supplementary instructor and services. These are usually our co-taught classrooms. They may be pulled out of regular classrooms for the day to go to a resource room for specialized instruction. They may be in a regular school but only taught by special education teachers in a separate classroom. They may attend a special school designed for students with disabilities. They may be in a residential care facility that is taught by a trained staff, and or they may be homebound or in the hospital. And so this would be our least restrictive environment. So if I want you to make sure you understand, especially the OHI and the orthopedic impairments, if your child gets in a car wreck, you have to go through the special education department to get them classified so that they can receive special education services at the hospital or your house while they are recovering. And so you'll learn all about this next year in 2301, but this is the little introduction in 1301 that you get into special education. And so what can we do to increase learning for all students, including those with exceptionalities or what we know as disabilities? Pull-out programs we know can identify students and provide a stigma. So that's why, if at all possible, we want students to be mainstreamed to help prevent that stigma. Also, a big issue that occurs is that even though we try to mainstream students, teachers are not confident. If you are not trained in special education, then you as a teacher may not be confident to provide those materials and resources for students. And I just want to let you know, I mean, that's 13 categories. And within those categories, there are multiple disabilities, and within those multiple disabilities, there is a range of severity. So no regular education teacher is going to be able to master all needs for students. And so teachers who really want to do what's best for their students may feel very inadequate and not confident. And so what can we do? We can instead provide special education aides in the classroom. We can provide co-teachers, which are certified teachers in special education, and continue to provide assistive technology as it is available to us. But again, assistive technology may single out the student if they're the only one using it. So assistive technology in itself will have some cons, but in many cases the pros will far outweigh the cons. So assistive technology is like using a laptop or using an iPad. Maybe the student needs a color overlay, so anything that will assist that student. Some students have a specific learning disability just in math, so they need a calculator. But if no other students are allowed it, again, it may identify them. But if all students are allowed to use it, then it would not do so. And so that's one way that we can help combat the stigma, and then we can provide some technologies that will help the teacher feel a little bit more confident. Okay, so that is the end of chapter 2. I'm going to stop here and do chapter 3, but chapter 2 and 3 reading quizzes will be released, but I'm going to give you until next week to complete them. So we will review for the test in class on Monday if you have me on Monday, or Tuesday if you have me on Tuesday. And so I'm going to leave chapter 2 and 3 quiz open this week and through next week, since I was late in uploading everything.